And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, July 17th, 8 EST, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Cinemasters Reviews. Only one review this evening. We will be reviewing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, as well as I'm going to be counting down my top 5 films of 2023 so far, a little past the halfway point. And joining me to do both of these is the one and only returning guest, Scott, the Esquire Harvey. Scott, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Payson. Thank you for having me back. I'm glad I didn't bottle it my first time on. And yeah, our mutual acquaintance Caleb Coho was kind of shocked that I was going to be on for a blockbuster episode. So I am excited to set the record straight about my favorite ongoing movie franchise tonight.
Absolutely. I know how much you love this franchise, and I also know, just like me, I know you see so many movies, like so many new releases, and I thought if I was going to get someone to count down the top 5 movies of the year so far, you would have a pretty dang good list. But before we get started in the show, I did just want to make a quick little update. I've already let Scott know, so I'm not like blindsiding him. We stand in solidarity with the Writers Guild of America and the and SAG-AFTRA Screen Actors Guild. The opinions of mine do not necessarily reflect everyone in the video store, but I'm just saying here for Cinemasters Reviews, this is how we reflect. Now, there was a big post that SAG-AFTRA made today. Reviews are not considered promotion, and I have never considered film criticism. I do not believe good film criticism should be viewed as promotion. So going forward, we will still be reviewing movies here at Cinemasters Reviews, but I just wanted to make it very abundantly clear that we do stand with the guilds, who are essentially they are requesting essentially just for a basic living wage. I don't think any human work should ever be replaced by AI. I do believe that that these mega wealthy executives should be paying their workers for the residuals from streaming. If that is going to be the future, as they say, they need to start adapting it to make sure that these artists can support themselves. Scott, that's just those are my quick thoughts. Is there anything you would like to add to that, or?
No, I second that. I know everyone is kind of like, oh no, what's going to happen to movies? But there are some things that are bigger than that, and I think you've summed that up pretty perfectly. So I'm with you.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to make it clear. Cinemasters Reviews will still be going on forward, but I just wanted to say we do stand in solidarity. But with that, we are going to be moving on to our only review of the night. But man, what a movie to be reviewing. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, directed by Christopher McQuarrie. This is the 7th entry in the Mission Impossible franchise. And I believe from what it's been announced, kind of like the 2-part finale in a way of at least the character of Ethan Hunt. Once again, we are following Ethan Hunt and the Impossible Mission Force, and this time he is battling up against seems timely, a AI force called the Entity. Some returning faces make their return. We have some new faces. Ethan seems to be on the run again. Scott, real quick, why don't you run us down your overall thoughts on the Mission Impossible franchise as a whole?
Yeah, like I said up front, this is my favorite ongoing franchise. I think it's just offering something different from most of what's out there in terms of, the big franchise blockbuster stuff. And I think one of the reasons for that is because they've mixed up the directors so much over the years. Starting off with somebody like Brian De Palma making essentially a spy thriller And then, you have John Woo and his Hong Kong action. You had J.J. Abrams and his sort of techno thriller. You had Brad Bird and the big stunts. And now you have Christopher McQuarrie, who I think is maybe his style is not as pronounced as the others, but he's just one-upping himself basically with every single movie seems to be his goal. And honestly, when you have Tom Cruise at the heart of your franchise, you can't do much wrong, in my opinion. I mean, we saw what he was able to do last year with Top Gun Maverick, and yeah, I think he is the centerpiece. Even as the directors and everything have changed over the years, he is the centerpiece. And I just really enjoy. Obviously the action is mind blowing and practical in a lot of ways, but also the cast of characters I think is so much more memorable and engaging to me than, let's say, the Fast and the Furious, right, which is another franchise out there with a big ensemble like this. I just enjoy hanging out with this crew, watching them do missions. I think that's really the joy of these movies, and so I just enjoy everything about this franchise. I like every one of the movies, even number two. I know it's the ugly stepchild of the bunch, but I think it has its positive qualities, even if it is the bottom of the list.
No, absolutely. I honestly echo your sentiments where I also believe this is the best current like running movie franchise. Like considering we are 7 films deep, I'm still shocked at the level of quality that is contained in every single movie. I'm not one of the Mission Impossible 2 defenders. I actually watched it very recently for the first time. I was like, okay, not the biggest fan of this one, but it's so funny. The first one I ever saw was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the fifth one, in theaters back in 2015. And until now, I'd never really gone back and watched the older ones. And this year, I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to go back and watch the 1 through 4. And yeah, like you said, I love how each one has a different director and just the different styles they add to them. I was shocked as how much I loved Ghost Protocol. Like, I think maybe from like a pure like pacing like perspective, and from a pure just like blockbuster filmmaking, I'd say aside from Fallout, that one might be my favorite one. But I also loved Rogue Nation. I would put 1 and 3 like sort of in the same ballpark. I go back and forth as to which one I like a little more. I think I like the style of 1 with like what De Palma brings, but just Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3 is just I still think he's Owen is probably the best villain of the franchise. And yeah, I think, like you said, I think having Tom Cruise at the center of your franchise, it just makes these movies feel bigger because he just has such a love for like the art of movie making, and his partnership with Christopher McQuarrie, now 3 films deep, or 4 films now if you count Jack Reacher in there. I think
Maverick, he
and Maverick,
produced
yeah,
also.
yeah, he produced Maverick. So they've collaborated so many times. They understand each other's vision, and if this is how we are going to, if this is the start of the ending of the franchise, then I think this franchise is going to go out on a high note because I really, really liked Dead Reckoning Part 1. Yeah, with a movie that is 2 hours and 40 minutes, it might not be like the breeziest watch with that runtime, but I never found myself being bored with it. Like, I feel it does a really great job at moving from set piece to set piece and still keeping your attention. Scott, what did you think about the runtime in general?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I would comparing it to Indiana Jones, for example, a couple of weeks ago, which about the same runtime. I was so bored in like the middle of Indiana Jones. They just did. If you're gonna have a runtime that long, you got to be able to wow me. And this movie wowed me. I mean, just it never stops moving. Maybe some of it was because I was in 4DX, so my seat was never stopping moving either. So maybe that was just me, but it really feels like the pace is, maybe the most frenetic in the franchise. There are some times when, we stop and take a breather and kind of catch up with everybody. But, you know, some of those scenes are still just as, thrilling. Like, there's these like Mexican standoffs in a way that happen, just not even violent, just the characters all like in a place talking to each other. And so it moves by really quickly. I mean, I would put it up there with the other great, sort of non-animated blockbuster from the year, John Wick Chapter 4, in terms of the pacing and how well I thought it kept its foot on the gas pedal the whole time.
I believe this movie and John Wick Chapter 4 are essentially have similar run times. And something I love about both these movies is we enter the final act, like the final big action set piece, around with an hour left of the film, and it holds your attention the entire time. Now, while John Wick 4 is essentially just it starts at 80 miles per hour and just keeps on getting faster, this final set piece definitely has some it sort of has some peaks and valleys, not in terms of quality, but just in terms of the stakes of everything that are happening. So that is something I did enjoy. If I were to say maybe one thing about the pacing, I'd say maybe the first 20 minutes, it takes a little bit of time to get going, but I think it's just because it's setting up so much, because we're not just setting up this movie, we're setting up the next two movies. But that first conversation between Ethan Hunt and, from if you saw the trailers, the return of Kittredge, that scene, I don't want to spoil too much, but from that scene alone, I was like, okay, let's go. And then you have the scene at the airport. Just everything after that, I think, was just bam, bam, bam. Like you said, Scott, I love these characters so much. Ethan Hunt, I think, is a phenomenal main character. I think Luther and Benji are, of course, back. Ilsa makes a return. What do you think about? Let's just start with the returning characters as a whole, and how they were.
I love this crew. They've never worn out their welcome for me, and I think they always find good ways to add to it. We'll talk about the new characters, but when Ilsa was introduced in Rogue Nation, that was just one. That's my favorite one of the franchise.
Fair.
And her introduction is one of the reasons for that. Instantly you're just wow, who is this? She really just grabs hold of your attention. But you have these long-lasting characters like Benji and Luther, and Simon Pegg. You see him in these movies, you think, oh, he's the comic relief character or whatever. I mean, sure, he has some jokes, but another thing I love about this franchise is it's much more well balanced when it comes to its sense of humor than a lot of big movies that are out there nowadays. And Benji is a real character. He's not just there to crack jokes, right? There's a lot of heart in this character. He and Ethan have a really close bond and friendship that really drives a lot of the emotional storytelling in these movies. And same with Luther, right? Luther, has been around since the very first movie, so you really have formed a bond with that character as well. And you mentioned, Kittredge coming back as well, Henry Czerny, long-awaited return for him, and I thought he did some excellent character acting. He's, you see these, it's Alec Baldwin shows up in some of the movies. He's one of these where he takes it so seriously with his dialogue, but there's that twinkle in his eye, that he's just fully leaning into the sort of camp of it, which I'm always on board for. So yeah. And Rebecca Ferguson, again, she's, I think, a force as Ilsa Faust, always just commanding presence.
So I think in regards to the returning characters, I think I'm with you on maybe about half the cast. I love how Ethan Hunt in this movie, more so than even the previous films, Ethan Hunt just feels like he cannot catch a break. And I know that's kind of the entire franchise, but more so maybe in this movie than I think all of them. He just feels so out of breath throughout the film, and I do enjoy that we're kind of starting to see Tom Cruise is starting to get a little older. He can still do the awesome stunts that he's always done, but I do think the character of Ethan Hunt is starting to reflect that a little. This is maybe my favorite interpretation of Benji so far. I love how much it's starting to show, look, Benji cares so much about Ethan and this team that he's willing to essentially do so many things that normally he would be scared to do. But he's a part of this mission. He wants to support Ethan as a whole. In regards to Luther, he isn't maybe given the most amount to do in this film, but he'll probably have a little bit more to do in Dead Reckoning Part 2. Without spoiling, wasn't a big fan of how this movie kind of sidelines Ilsa throughout the majority of the film. And I like you, I really loved her introduction in Rogue Nation. I think she's handled really, really well in Fallout. And I just wish McQuarrie would have given that character a little bit more to do, because I think Rebecca Ferguson is a great actress in these movies. I think she is a great like action foil in a way to Tom Cruise, and it just made me disappointed that they did sideline her character a little.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Unfortunately, it's like, narrative necessity in a way, because you introduce Haley Atwell, who is like in the role that she has been in the last two times. So something kind of has to give there with the character, the performance. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of it either, because I enjoy her. I enjoy Ilsa a little bit more than I enjoyed Haley Atwell in this movie, but we'll see what is to come in the future. Like, this is just her introduction. I just didn't feel like she made as much of a mark. Not to get ahead of us, but as
no, yeah, like my next point was going to be the newer characters, because like you said, Haley Atwell sort of the main new protagonist that is introduced for Ethan, and yeah, she definitely does play. She's definitely like a match for Ethan in terms of wits, in the way how like Ilsa was a match for Ethan in terms of like combat. I love how Grace and Ethan just sort of go back and forth, how they sort of had this like cat and mouse game with how they played. There's a really funny sequence towards like maybe towards the second act where they're in like a car chase and they're handcuffed, and they have to figure out how to like maneuver. And by the way, this is kind of pointed out. I don't think it's pointed out to the level it should have been. Grace is maybe the worst driver I think I've seen in a mainstream movie in a long time. Like, this woman cannot drive straight to save her life without crashing. And, like, it's kind of acknowledged, but it's not acknowledged to the point that you would expect as to how poor her driving skill is. But the other new character I really, really loved was Palm Clementif as the assassin Paris. I'm not sure if the trailers revealed who the main villain of this film is, but she's kind of working for the main villain, and she is having so much fun in this role. Just like those first few scenes in Rome where she's just chasing after Ethan and just laughing as she's just running over all these motorcycles. And that, if you've seen the trailers, you saw the tease for her big fight with Ethan in like that like alleyway. I just think she is so good in this movie. What do you think about Palm Clementif in this film?
Yeah, she was great. Again, just a real interesting presence, something different. I like the number of female characters that show up in this franchise, and they all seem unique from each other. I'm saying that I don't, I wasn't as big of a fan of Haley Atwell as I was of Rebecca Ferguson's performance or whatever, but they're doing something different, which is good. They're not just there to be the, token love interest or damsel in distress. They're neither of those things, which I really enjoy. And yeah, Palm Clementif, great addition. Really sort of tension anytime she shows up, because she doesn't say very many words in the movie, and so you're kind of just wondering what's going on, what is her whole deal, what are her motivations, what's going on inside that head.
And I honestly love that, how she just kind of shows up. She is immediately a threat, and the movie doesn't take time to like be like, oh, this is this character Paris. She was hired by this character in order to kill Ethan, and she has this vendetta. Like, no, like she has a really great presence. She's in the story. Let's go. Like, it doesn't feel the need to waste time with this like unnecessary exposition. I think you get why her character goes through the arc that she goes through, and she does have an arc, and I do think that was one of the highlights of this film. Something I want to talk to you about. So this film is about Ethan Hunt kind of hunting down this like this AI that has the ability to go sentient. Now, there are two things I want to talk about that. One, wow, what a timely time for this film to like come out, like with everything I said about just the strike earlier and how AI is just such a crutch of what's going on. And two, this is probably the biggest like step into the science fiction genre that the Mission Impossible franchise has gone through up to this point. I personally enjoyed it, but I can see how that can divide some fans. What did you think about the threat being this like futuristic version of AI.
I mean, I like it because again, you have with these long-running franchise, you have to keep raising the stakes in some way in future movies, and you know these are supposed to be impossible missions. They never turn out to actually be impossible, but um, where do you go next from, you've just had this multi-movie arc with the Syndicate and with Solomon Lane, right, who was a really sort of menacing villain. And where do you go from there? Well, you have to introduce something that again is an even more difficult mission for them to accomplish, right? And you have somebody who knows everything about them and is always, one step ahead and um can see the future almost in a way. Like it is a sci-fi type thing, but it just feels like sort of the natural next step that the franchise needed to take in order for there to still be some suspense, right? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we go into these movies and we expect that they're going to accomplish the mission, right? In the end, because that's what we've come to see in every movie. So what do you do to keep that suspense there about, oh, are they going to do it? Are they not? Right? Because you have to have that in these movies for them to continue working. And I thought it was tastefully done. I don't think that, they, it went weird or over the top or anything with the AI. I thought it was nice and threatening. And like I said, the natural next evolution in the villains here.
Yeah, there are no like lasers shooting out. There is no like robots coming to invade. Like I do think even though the AI is the threat of this film, hey, your movie buddies right down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though the AI is definitely like the threat of this movie, it never feels like it never feels like we are like watching like what should be like 80 years into the future. I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, honestly, like 5 years from now, it's scary, but this could totally be something that might happen like behind the scenes. We talked about Christopher McQuarrie earlier. Regardless of who you think the best director of this franchise is so far, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that I think Christopher McQuarrie is the best director in terms of the action of this franchise. The way how he directs all of the action scenes, whether it's a shootout in the streets or in like a nightclub. This movie has an incredible nightclub sequence, or whether it's just hand-to-hand combat in alleyways or on a train. I think I think just McQuarrie knows how to shoot and make this action feel super, super compelling while also giving you a great scale of what's going on. Scott, what did you think about the action in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, again, I have a complaint in movies nowadays that the action scenes just go on for too long. I think in a lot of cases, I think Indiana Jones had a couple examples of that. To go back to a recent one, but the action sequences in this movie are very long, but I was never bored. There aren't lulls in them. Again, he's continuously raising the stakes. Like you think about that end of Fallout, right, with the helicopter chase, and we crash, we're falling off the side of the mountain. At the same time, we have Benji and Ilsa are fighting, and we have the bomb that's about to go off. And there's so much going on at once, but he is able to keep it all controlled and keep the audience understanding where everyone is, what everyone is doing, and why it is important to the movies. And yeah, he just keeps outdoing himself in terms of the spectacular action. If you've seen the trailer, of course, you've seen maybe the most spectacular sort of set piece moment that happens, but there's so much more that you haven't seen. I mean, and even seeing it again, like because it comes towards the end of the movie. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, but you know, the anticipation, even knowing, having seen the shot in the trailer and everything, the anticipation was still so high for it because you understand the context behind it and everything. So I have no complaints about the action. Maybe it's like slightly just below John Wick, like in terms if you really want to compare them, like in terms of. I mean, it's different. It's different, right? Because these are more the set pieces, and John Wick is more fight choreography and stuff like that. But
I do think this makes a difference. Mission Impossible PG-13, John Wick is R-rated.
Sure,
Mission
yeah.
Impossible needs to pull its punches just a little bit more, while John Wick can show you everything.
But it's spectacular action. As somebody who feels like I've seen every version of a car chase that there is to see in movies by now, I really enjoyed the one that they had in this movie, even still.
Yeah, movie is a phenomenal car chase. Like you said, with that huge stunt. I saw this movie in a packed house in the biggest IMAX here in Arizona, and just when that happens, it goes silent for maybe like 5 to 10 seconds, and just certain members of the audience just started going like, "Whoa!" Which like normally would annoy me, but it's Tom Cruise, and he just kind of like brings that, and I'm like, "Yeah, let's go! Look at this guy just doing this." Yeah, no, I found the stunts in this movie to be so much fun. Yeah, that set piece, like you said, I've maintained that I think my favorite set piece of these movies have been, still to this day, was the Burj Khalifa in Ghost Protocol. I think that one may have topped it. Just how it uses silence in that moment is so perfect. Yeah, looking at my notes. Something I do want to say. Something I do love is all the new characters do seem to get their point in the spotlight. Two characters that I thought were going to be annoying, that reminded me of two other characters we keep mentioning this movie from Dial of Destiny. I remember Boyd Holbrook and whoever his like partner was in Dial of Destiny. They're just sort of like chasing after Indy, and like that was maybe one of my least favorite things in Dial of Destiny. In this movie, there are two agents that are chasing after Ethan, played by Shea Wiggum and Greg Tarzan Davis. When they first showed up, I was going to be like, okay, this is probably going to be my least favorite part of the movie. They're just going to be like the comical foil to Ethan, where you know they're never going to be able to stop him, and we're just going to be focused on the main villain. But I think they had their moment to shine as well, and I think they were really, really funny. What did you think about these two characters?
I thought they were awesome, honestly. I loved Shea Wiggum in this movie. Like, it's one of those unsung performances. Nobody is really going to talk about him coming out of this movie, but I talked about Henry Czerny doing some character acting. I mean, this is like the character actor, like journeyman type performance. Like, you don't even know. I mean, he has a name, right? But I couldn't tell you what the character's name is. I don't think it's barely ever said, if at all, in the movie, right? He is just the heavy, right? He is the agent. Again, we're not even sure exactly who he's working for in the movie. He's just the guy who is chasing after him, like the one normal guy amidst all these sort of eccentric characters or whatever. And I thought he was great at being like the exasperated, like, again, just normal guy trying to navigate this complicated web with all of these crazy people involved in it. And his partner too, Greg Davis. I mean, he got one line that I loved when they're talking about, they're kind of trying to figure out, who is the good guys, who is the bad guys here. And Shea Wiggum says something like, "Whose side are you on?" And he says, "I guess I'm on everyone's," right? Because they're talking about the threat that the AI is posing, I guess, to everyone. And it was a great line.
No, I think my favorite moment with these characters is during the train sequence when Greg Tarzan Davis is trying to get everyone off the train. He's like, "All right, everyone, just remain calm. We're just gonna evacuate right this way." And Shea Wiggum just comes behind him, just like, "Everyone on!"
Yeah, exactly.
Just showing like, I don't have time to do this. Let's just all get off. Something that I did see, Eric Roberts asked, "What is the subject line of part 2?" Without giving away too much about the ending of this film, something I really did love was, even though it is part 1, this absolutely feels like a complete story. Like Ethan had a mission in this film, and he was able to accomplish that mission. As much as I love Across the Spider-Verse, that definitely feels like half a story. There is not really like a resolution with the character of Miles in that film. This one, we do get a resolute ending, even though it is a part 1. Did you enjoy that, Scott? That there wasn't necessarily like the biggest cliffhanger, but you do still have like a conclusion to the story.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I do think it probably threaded that needle a little bit better than Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, it's just different approaches. Like, after we see Beyond the Spider-Verse, I'm sure we're going to come back and be like, okay, well, it made sense. But yeah, that movie truly does feel like it breaks off in media race, like right in the middle of the scene. And Here, I was like, okay, I'm ready for it to be over now. Like that, I feel satisfied with the conclusion of this, even though I know that there's part two to come. Like, of course, I'm going to be highly anticipating part two, but like, I think they did a good job of making it feel worth your while. And obviously, Across the Spider Verse is worth your while too.
Oh,
but just a different sort of thing going on there.
Yeah, the threat has not necessarily been neutralized in this film, but the heroes are in a very good place to hopefully neutralize that threat for Dead Reckoning Part 2. Before we head into final ratings, one major point I wanted to hit on. I think this is maybe the funniest movie in the franchise. You sort of tackled that. It's not like to the level of like current MCU movies where there's like a quip every 5 seconds because the characters need to show, hey, we're not in too much threat, we're in a good mood. But like the little moments it has, I think, are so much fun. Like easily the moment that made me laugh the hardest was during the airport scene when Benji calls Ethan and is like, hey, just want to let you know, there's a nuclear bomb that might be going off. That might be going off in 20 seconds. I didn't want you to panic about it. And Ethan's like, a nuclear bomb is something that is okay to panic about. And just that interaction, I think, was so much fun. What were some of your favorite moments, like just from a comedic side of this movie?
I mean, I loved the car chase we mentioned and how it ends up. Basically, the car is like destroyed, and we have Ethan trying to get away from everyone, and he runs out, and the police are coming, and he's like trying to get away, and he just looks down and he realizes he's holding the steering wheel of the car in his hands, like nothing else, because the car is like destroyed or whatever. But he just has the steering wheel there. I thought that was great. And then even at the end, right, even though it's so tense and like you're just right in the middle of that huge set piece at the end, when they go through like the dining car of the train or whatever, when they're having to crawl from car to car, I thought that was like some great, like very like subtle, not like, again, not overdoing it, like almost slapstick style. Like we have like bell peppers and like the deep fryer is spraying oil everywhere and a grease fire is starting on the stove. It's like, what more could there be, right? It's like, let's just throw it. I mean, it was campy and it was fun. Like I enjoyed that right in the middle of this like really tense set piece.
And the last one I wanted to point out is there's a scene where Ethan's driving on a motorcycle and he doesn't know where to go, and he's like, Benji, what do I do? And Benji's like, just calm down. This is really, really tense for me. And the movie just paused for a second just for Ethan to go like, oh yeah, and it's not tense for me, the one that has to chase after this moving train. I thought that was really, really funny. Yeah. Eric Roberts did say, did you miss me? Yes, we did, Eric. Thank you for joining us tonight. Scott, before you head into final ratings, is there anything else you want to bring up about this movie?
No, I mean, I loved it. All hail King Tom Cruise. There's been a lot of discourse recently about, oh, did he save movies or whatever, blah, 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 blah. I think he's doing more than just about anyone else is. So I think we could just kind of shove off with all that discourse, in my opinion.
I would absolutely agree. He can have his opinions of The Flash as he wants. He's done more than enough for the good sake of cinema. Here at Cinemasters Reviews, we review movies on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 is abysmal, just one of the worst, just an absolute awful piece of film, and 10 is incredible, near perfect, and one that you are going to be remembering for quite a long time. Scott, on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, what would you give Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1?
I give it 9. Yeah, it was spectacular. I only have very few complaints, and I think it fits right in the top tier of these movies, along with Rogue Nation, Fallout, and the first movie, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'm gonna go maybe a little lower than you, and I'm gonna give it 8.5. I think this is a great action film. If I were to rank it of the franchise, I would weirdly put it like right in the middle. I don't like it quite as much as Fallout, Ghost Protocol, and Rogue Nation, but I do like it more than the first 3. And I just think how this movie sets up what is going to be the perhaps the final chapter in Ethan Hunt's journey. I think Dead Reckoning Part 2 has the potential to maybe be my favorite film of the franchise. If you do love these movies, I would highly recommend you go and see this movie in theaters. Even if you're just a fan of just like great action movies, go and see this one. Like you said, Tom Cruise makes movies feel bigger, and just the love that he has for the craft of movie making makes it all the more worth it, at least for me. And from what it sounds like, for you as well, Scott. But yeah, that brings us to the end of our review segment of Cinemaster's reviews. We are now going to be heading into our next segment. We don't always get to do these. Top 5, and that is top 5 films of 2023 so far. Me and Scott have not collaborated at all as sharing our picks. I kind of wanted to be a surprise. But before we do share our picks, Scott, what have you thought of 2023 in the year of film as a whole in regards to the movies that have been released so far?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about this earlier. I think it comes out pretty similar to 2022 so far, honestly, in the sense that, my favorite movies for the most part you're going to see on my list are more of the indie, stuff. That's just what I gravitate towards, the prestige movies, whatever you want to call them. However, as much as there have been disappointing blockbusters, stuff like we mentioned Indiana Jones, obviously, is an example that comes to mind. I thought the Transformers movie was really bad. Ant-Man the Wasp, Quantumania, stuff like that. I think there have been huge blockbusters that have absolutely delivered, just in the same way that Maverick, the way that Way of Water, Nope, like all delivered last year. Between Across the Spider-Verse, Dead Reckoning, and John Wick Chapter 4. So I think there's been, like, whatever you want at the movies, like, you have been able to find a very good example of that, I feel like, in the movies that have been released this far. I mean, I'm not going to say it's been an amazing year thus far, but the top of my list is very, very strong, I think.
Yeah, I think that last sentiment is the one I think I believe in most. I don't think this has been like a phenomenal year so far. I think it's going to be a very exciting Oscar season coming up. But like right now, we've had some pretty solid hitters, but I think the top of my list is so top heavy. I believe I've seen around 64 2023 films so far, and the movies in my top 5 I absolutely love and would be very surprised. Maybe the 5 could totally slip out of my top 10, but I don't see, like, I see the top 4 staying in there for the majority of the year. Scott, I say how we do this. I'm gonna have you start off, and if I have a movie on your list, or if you have a movie on my list, I'd say we just say I'll save that for later. So Scott, what is your 5th favorite movie of 2023 so far?
My number 5. Okay, my number 5 is actually the movie that I talked about the last time I was on your show. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I loved this movie. Kelly Freeman Craig coming back really strong, worth the wait of 6-7 years, however long it was between this and Edge of 17. I thought she did a spectacular job of adapting the Judy Blume novel. It was funny. It was, had so many likable characters in it. Very realistic, unwilling to shy away from some of the real problems, especially that that women have growing up at this particular period in their adolescence. Such great performances. Abby Ryder Fortson as Margaret. Rachel McAdams, just incredible, I felt, as the mom. We talked about it the last time I was here. You can go check that out if you want to hear my more detailed thoughts. But I saw this one twice in theaters. It made me feel so good both times. I was just smiling ear to ear when I came out of it.
Yeah, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Not on my list, but still, it's still in my top 10 of the year so far. And yeah, like you said, I think this is Kelly Freeman Craig. Loved Edge of 17. Very happy to say she now has 2 really great coming of age movies under her belt. I think just the way she portrays youth and just this awkward phase in someone's life, specifically in a female's life, I think is just so wonderful, and doesn't make it like awkward in any like it's awkward, but in like the good kind of awkward that you would expect from this type of movie. Like you don't feel weird watching this movie. Rachel McAdams is so phenomenal. I think we talked about that in the review. Great adaptation of Judy Blume's writing. It really does a great job at capturing that language. Does a great job at capturing the time period of the 70s. And yeah, just watching Margaret's journey and how she sort of comes to grips with her faith. Something I loved about what you said in our review was that's kind of a way that like a lot of young people today are sort of grappling with their faith of like, hey, maybe I don't really belong to like a specific religious denomination, but I do still believe in God. I think is a really great way how she portrays that. So yeah, a great number 5 pick, Scott. My number 5, we were talking about it a little earlier. That would be my favorite live action blockbuster of the year so far, John Wick Chapter 4. What a phenomenal I'm just typing out the banner. What a phenomenal conclusion to this character's journey. I've loved every single John Wick film up to this point. This one's probably my favorite. It definitely is the one that feels the biggest. I just love how tired and how beat down and how broken John Wick feels in this film. But my gosh, he is going to scrap, he is going to fight, and he is going to do whatever it takes to take down the people that have wronged him. I loved Bill Skarsgård, probably being my favorite villain of the franchise so far. I think what makes this movie is how good the side characters are. I love Donnie Yen as being the first character that I think is like a complete equal to John Wick in every single way. And just all the action scenes they have. I love seeing the Continental in Japan. I think is super, super fun. And yeah, that last hour, just 3 insane action set pieces with the like Frogger-esque John Wick in the street scene going through the like abandoned buildings and that long staircase, literally what feels like up to heaven in a way, I think is so incredible. Chad Stahelski is such a great action director, and yeah, this is my favorite blockbuster, like live action blockbuster of the year. To not to spoil one of my picks coming down the pipeline, but what did you think about John Wick Chapter 4?
Loved it. Yeah. I mean, this will be a mild spoiler for the rest of my list, but my 6, 7, 8, I have Dead Reckoning, John Wick, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So the 3 blockbusters that I was talking about, you could put those in any order. Honestly, for me, I change by the day which one I love the most. But this movie was incredible. Some of the best action that I've ever seen, and I really loved the world and the characters. Dead Reckoning almost feels this way at times too, where it has this sort of like Death Race 2000, it's a mad world thing going on with like all these different weird characters going after the same thing, chasing after the same thing, trying to accomplish the same goal, and it leads to spectacular results in both cases. This is my favorite John Wick movie.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. What a phenomenal collection of 4 films. Scott, what is your number 4?
Oops, sorry, I froze for a second. I'm back now. I think we're going to be skipping my number 4. We'll see. Maybe I'll be surprised. But my number 4 is Past Lives.
We can come back to that one.
All right, sure.
My number 4, we could also totally be skipping it. When I walked out of this movie, my first thought was, man, everyone is going to hate this movie. I loved every second of it. My number 4 is Beau is Afraid. Are we going to be talking about it later?
Go ahead and talk about it.
Sweet. Yeah. I loved Beau is Afraid. Ari Aster is just one of those people. It's so funny. I loved Hereditary. I'm famously not the biggest fan of Midsommar. So yeah, I know a little bit of trepidation here. So walking to Beau is Afraid, I was like, okay, I really love the trailers of this movie, but how am I going to react walking out? And man, this movie, I think this is probably his funniest movie in just a really sick and disturbing way. And I think that's the reason I gravitated to it so much. Just Ari Aster is so good at capturing nightmares on camera, and this is just a 3-hour-long nightmare as you watch this person just completely have like the worst period of his life. I think it does a great job at capturing anxiety. I think it does a great job at capturing guilt. Joaquin Phoenix, I think, is phenomenal. I talked about Rachel McAdams being an incredible supporting performance in Are You There, God It's Me, Margaret. But honestly, if I were to give the Best Supporting Actress Oscar right now, Patti LuPone would get my pick. I think she is so good as just the opposite of Rachel McAdams playing a great mom. Patti LuPone playing the worst mom you could possibly think for this character. All the actors that come in for these bit roles. I love Nathan Lane. I love Parker Posey. I love the look of the movie. It is 3 hours. It's long. But man, watching this movie is an experience. I totally understand if it's not for everyone. But my God, did I love this movie. Scott, what did you think about Beau is Afraid?
I'm with you. I'm on Team Beau is Afraid. Absolutely. I enjoyed the heck out of it. Probably my least favorite Ari. No, you know what? I think I'd put it above Hereditary just because I don't like the ending of Hereditary. But yeah, I love all three of his movies. Like the journey that this movie takes you on. I was there for every single segment of it. I love the like Lynchian comedy of the Nathan Lane and
So weird.
why am I forgetting who?
Oh, I forgot to. Let me look it up.
Amy Ryan, Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan section of the movie. And then this, super surreal like fantasy sequence that happens in the second act, or third act, whatever you want to break this movie up. And then, yeah, the places it goes to in the end are definitely going to alienate people if they aren't already alienated. But I think there's a purpose to everything. I think he's a very precise filmmaker, and if you come out of this thinking it's just weird for weird's sake, I think you're not trying hard enough, maybe. So I really really enjoy everything that he puts out. I think he's one of the best working.
It genuinely feels like, in a way, the ending was kind of trolling the audience, but I loved it, and I can't help but explain how much I loved it. Scott, what did you think about what is your number 3?
All right, my number 3 is How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Really, really cool indie movie that I hope people will seek out. That Neon released. It is this sort of eco thriller about a group of young environmental activists who decide that they're going to blow up an oil pipeline in West Texas, remote part of West Texas, and we see their preparations. The movie flashes back and forth. We see the present day where they're preparing to blow up the pipeline, and then we flash back and learn about each one of their stories and how they got to this particular place, and we see the different motivations that all of them have. And even though the task that they're embarking in could probably fairly be described as an act of terrorism, right? The movies, it makes you empathize with the characters in a way because you understand what brought them all to this point, even if I myself am not going to run out and do the things that they did, and I don't think the movie is necessarily advocating for you to do that. It's a pretty sociopathic thing that they do, but again, there's excellent character work that helps you get inside all of their minds. It has a great ensemble of like people you may have seen before and people you definitely haven't seen before. And it's so gripping, like beginning to end, you'll be on the edge of your seat watching this. I think it's such a comprehensive look at an issue that is very, very pressing and which there aren't enough stories out there about. So please seek this one out. It's on VOD now.
You rarely see movies nowadays that are this. The only word I can think to use it is radical with its politics. And I think that's what makes this movie so interesting to watch, is this movie is unfledgingly looking as to like, look, we're not going to say that these characters shouldn't necessarily go to jail, but they are absolutely doing this for the right cause, and they're not really hurting anyone when you see what's happening, except for like big business stuff. And I think that's what makes this movie so thrilling, is as you are watching this movie, you want these characters to succeed so badly, even though the stakes it's set up, it seems so hard for them to actually pull this off. yeah, like you said, I think it does a really great job at setting up each character's motivations and showing you why they are in this operation. I think Ariella Bearer is great as like the leader of this group and essentially the person that's going to like take the brunt of the blame for everything. And yeah, like I'm very happy Neon funded this movie. I heard good things about it out of Sundance, I believe. I believe this was a Sundance movie. Am I crazy? TIFF, yeah. TIFF, or like late last year, and I'm so happy it was picked up by a distribution service because, yeah, I think this was a great movie. Not on my list, but towards around like my top 15 area. But yeah. My number 3, pretty sure we're going to be talking about it a little later. One of the great auteurs working today. His name is Wes Anderson. My number 3 is Asteroid City. Are we talking about it later?
Go ahead and skip that. Yeah.
We'll skip that. What is your number 2?
Speaking of the great auteurs today, Kelly Reichardt, I would put in that camp, and my number 2 is Showing Up. I loved this movie. Again, another sort of indie drama, comedy drama, perhaps you could even say, because there are some funny moments in this movie, which you're not used to seeing from Reichardt. But I love pretty much all of her movies that I've seen. There's only a couple that I think I'm missing at this point, but this could be my favorite film by her because it is such a personal story of the difficulties and anxieties that come with creating art. Michelle Williams plays the sculptor who is trying to prepare her last works for her gallery showing that is going on at the end of the week, it seems, sort of when the movie opens, but is having to navigate all of this stuff happening in her own life, including her crazy brother played by John Magaro who's digging holes in his backyard. You have this wounded bird, which she has accidentally stumbled into caring for. You have Hong Chow as her landlord, who won't pay for the hot water in her place. You can tell it comes all from a real place. I highly recommend it, and I haven't shut up about this interview all year, but Kelly Reichardt's interview with Mark Maron on WTF really will give you even a newer appreciation for this movie when you hear that she kind of went through a lot of stuff in her, similar to what Michelle Williams is going through in her quest to become an artist and a filmmaker, and had to, survive a lot. But, the gallery scene that this movie culminates, like, I think it couldn't be more perfect. And it there is an affirming, hopeful note about it that in the end, you're going to find the reason why you're doing this, and you're going to see that it's hard and it's stressful and it may not always feel like it, but there is something that makes it worth it in the end, and that's the people who are there and support you. And there's such a great ensemble in the movie, along with the people I mentioned. You have Judd Hirsch playing her dad, and he's really great in the movie, and a few other random faces that show up. But Hong Chow is actually the standout in the cast for me. I thought she was phenomenal. But this is such a great movie, such an interesting look at this sort of insular world that we don't always see depicted.
Yeah, Showing Up is currently my number 7 of the year, and it is my favorite film that I have yet to that I wasn't able to review. Yeah, like you said, I think what this movie has to say about the journey of being an artist and the journey of just all the struggles that go through that. Like you said, it felt so personal watching this film. Like, I was like, has Kelly Reichardt experienced some of this stuff? And now hearing this interview, which is an interview I want to go listen to now, I think it is very interesting that those are struggles that she has gone through. And yeah, like you said, I also think Hong Chow was the standout. At first, you kind of don't really like her character, just because she's sort of the foil for Michelle Williams' character, because she just refuses to pay for hot water. And then as the movie goes on, the movie does a great job at kind of humanizing her a little and making you care more for her. But yeah, Kelly Reichardt, I've only seen 2 of her movies. I've seen First Cow and I've seen this, and I think she just has such a great job at capturing the quieter moments of just human life. And I know that sounds so boring coming out explaining it like that, but I genuinely, when you watch these movies, I think it just does such a great job at just capturing like a little like community. And yeah, I could not recommend this movie more. I'm so happy I was finally able to talk about it, at least in this format. So thank you so much, Scott. But yeah, we will move on to my number 2. And yeah, I was saying John Wick Chapter 4 was my favorite live action blockbuster of the year. My favorite blockbuster is it's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I think probably one of the most like acclaimed movies of 2023 as like a grand scheme from like every single person. And it at least for most people, we don't have to name names. But yeah, everything you've heard, me and Jake gushed about this movie a month ago. It's one of the most beautifully animated movies I think I've ever seen. I love what this movie does with Gwen Stacy as a character. I love what this movie does with Miles, the character, following his journey from into the Spider-Verse. I still think I prefer that one slightly over this one, but just how this movie just feels like such a thrill ride from scene to scene, from action set piece to action set piece. I think it does a great job setting up 2 major antagonists with both the Spot and with Spider-Man 2099. Just how it sets up all these characters in what feels like it could be a long time, like a long bloated runtime. But I think it does a great job at filling that up and still making it feel focused. And yeah, that cliffhanger, like I am so excited for it Beyond the Spider-Verse next year. Scott, what did you think about Across the Spider-Verse?
Oh, sorry, I was coming off mute. Yeah, I loved it. Like I said, it's right there in my 6 to 8 range with those other blockbusters. Even though it has like the part one thing, there's just so much to love in this movie. The animation, they take it to new places, even from Into the Spider-Verse. I think it has a great sense of humor. And ultimately, what resonates with me the most is what the movie is trying to say about storytelling and the canon, and how it's okay to break the canon. And I think that's something that a lot of franchises and movies and everything need to learn nowadays. It feels more relevant than ever, and I just love that we have such a big popular movie that has this sort of very subversive idea on its mind. I hope everyone is picking up on exactly what it's trying to say.
I had not thought about that yet, and that is the coolest like way to look at this movie, of literally telling movies like, hey, it's okay to try new things and it's
Yeah.
okay to be different. Like I think it's wow, I never thought about that, but that is a
Miles
really
is the anomaly or whatever,
yeah.
Our hero is something that wasn't supposed to happen, right?
I've already seen this movie twice, and that honestly makes me appreciate it even more. So thank you so much, Scott. Well, our number ones are kind of spoiled from earlier in the list, but that's okay. Scott, what's your number one? If you want to give a little lead in.
Sure, yeah, you mentioned it earlier. One of my favorite filmmakers, Asteroid City by Wes Anderson. It's a phenomenal movie. I think just continues a hot streak for him that started with Bottle Rocket. I think the hot streak has been his whole career. I enjoy to love every single one of his movies, and this is no exception. He's coming off of a hot take, but what's my personal favorite, The French Dispatch. I know it's not a lot of people's favorite, but it is mine. So I was a little bit nervous, but I should never doubt him, honestly. Such a cool and interesting and visually captivating world that he creates, and in this small town. And of course, his ensembles are amazing as always. All the little side stories and everything that are going on in this movie, not just what is happening with Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson, who are kind of like our main figures, but all the little subplots, both serious and comedic, just add so much texture to this world. You really want to live in this world that he creates there. But it's such an interesting and it's the Wes Anderson movie I feel like I've come out of feeling like I need to think about this movie. Like, I don't know if there's another one that I could say that quite as much about as I can say about Asteroid City. Like, this movie sat with me for days afterwards because it is very existential. It has a lot of ideas about the relationship between art and life, and how art sort of may provide the answers to these big existential questions that we have about our lives. And it does it in this sort of dollhouse framework with 3 different layers of TV play, and we see the behind the scenes of the play and everything. And it's not for everyone. Wes Anderson's movies in general aren't, but I found it funny. I found it moving. I was just on the wavelength of everything that this movie was trying to do, and I think it's another home run for him. It's my only 5-star out of 5 movie from this year so far. So
it's so funny watching this movie, and with what you said about like how it connects all the little side stories together. This is the Wes Anderson movie to me that felt the most like I was watching like a Robert Altman movie. Like watching this, it felt like like a miniature version of Nashville, and I mean that in the best way possible. Of just watching all these characters sort of had like their little side stories. Like I loved Maya Hawke, playing like the teacher who's like secretly in love with like the musician character. I love Jeffrey Wright's character. Maybe my favorite performance of the entire movie. The production, just like every Wes Anderson movie, I think the color palette inside of Asteroid City is so appealing to look at. And like it's so funny watching this movie. It weirdly makes you think like something bad is going to happen, but nothing really bad ever does happen. But it just leaves you with just these ideas and sort of like psychological thoughts of like, what are we doing with our lives? And I really, really do like that. Like you said, it is, I think, out of all of Wes's movies, this is the one I've been thinking about the most after watching it and really trying to tackle like, what was he getting at? And that's the reason why it is so high on my list. I'd probably put this around. I believe right now it's like my 4th favorite Wes Anderson movie. I could totally see it going higher, close to 3. He's made 2 5-star movies for me, Tenenbaums and Fantastic Mr. Fox. So it'd be a little tough to touch those, but I could totally see it at least getting to number 3, and who knows, maybe it could surpass those other 2. But yeah, Asteroid City, brilliant film, and yeah, Alexander Desplat continues to kill it with every single score he composes for all of Wes's movies. Great pick and great choice for number 1. My number 1 is also my only 5-star movie. I talked about it when it first came out. Didn't have anyone to review it with, so very happy to finally discuss it with someone on camera. It's Past Lives. It is Celine Song's directorial debut. The framing device of this film, having it literally open with people watching the 3 main characters just sort of have a talk, like just talking at like a dinner table or at a bar, and then you literally just go into all those characters' lives and seeing like this is where their lives are at this point, I think is so beautiful. Any movie that references Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is always a plus for me, and the fact this movie is set in Montauk, I think, is really, really great. The character of Nora, I think, is such a wonderful main character because, like, you can clearly tell, she definitely loves her husband. She has feelings for Haesung, but she also is very career oriented, which is the reason why she never fully committed to him. I think Greta Lee is so great as the main character. I think John Magaro, I think everyone's been saying he's kind of the unsung hero of this part, because this could be, that is easily the like throwaway role of this film. And I think he makes those quiet moments so perfect. Explain this movie, because like I get it, like not a lot happens, but I don't think you need it. You are just watching these characters just have conversations, just consider things about lives. The things that are not being said, I think, are even more powerful than the things that are being said. I absolutely love this genre of brief encounter films, and I think this is such a great addition to that. And I think it's gorgeously shot by Celine Song, and easily my favorite ending of the film so far. It's my favorite movie right now. I don't see this movie coming out of my top 10 anytime soon. Probably not even coming out of my top 5 if anything does surpass it. Scott, it's on your list. What did you think about Past Lives?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not a lot happens. I don't know. A lot of emotions happen. That's for sure. And that 3rd act, I think, just packs a wallop. Like it take some time setting everything up, and I really enjoyed the way that it did that. But I think the third act is when the shoe really dropped, and the dialogue started getting deeper. The performances, felt like they kicked into a whole new level. And this is where John Magaro gets introduced, as you mentioned. So I think that has something to do with it as well, because, like I mentioned him already in Showing Up. I think he's having an incredible year, honestly. I want to see him pop up in supporting roles and more things for sure. He's got that vibe about him. But yeah, it's something different in this genre, right? Because of course you cannot not think about the Before trilogy, because at least for me, like that is sort of the hallmark in Brief Encounter movies. That's sort of the hallmark in all romantic dramas, like for me at least. But it's something different, right? Because this movie is really it's really interrogating that like moment at the end of Before Sunset where Jesse decides to stay, right? And it's like, well, what does that mean in reality? Like, what would it mean for someone to stay in that situation? And I think I love that the movie has such a, its cultural identity. It wears it on its sleeve too, because this Korean idea of Inyeon is so key to you understanding what the movie is trying to do, and it doesn't, apologize or compromise that, even though it's, again, from a different culture than most of the people watching the movie will be. So I think that is admirable about it too. But yeah, amazing performances, just deeply felt emotions, and really just, relatable situations for anyone who's ever been in a serious relationship before.
Yeah, watching this movie, just like you said, just the emotions are so strong as you're watching it. Like, I was weirdly kind of out of breath by the end, because I felt so much for these characters, and I was just thinking, like, what are they gonna do? Even though at the point where I think Nora does make her final decision, I think I had sort of realized what she was going to choose. It still really, really emotionally affected me. So yeah, those are our top fives. Didn't have quite as much overlap as I maybe had thought, which I'm totally happy, because I'm happy we were able to talk about more movies. Yeah. Looks like there was one last comment. Yes, Kelly, as we enter into the slowdown because of the strike. Yeah. If you have not seen any of these movies, please go check them out. But that does bring us to the end of today's show. Scott, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we leave, is there anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, I do my own podcast, Some Like It, Scott. It's very similar to what Payson does here with weekly movie reviews of new movies. Yeah, it's myself and my friend Scott Shelton. We've been doing it for over 5 years now, so there's quite a lot of episodes out there in the ether. And we're going to have our Dead Reckoning episode out this week. So if you want to hear me talk even more about this movie, you can check that out. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts.
We'll definitely be listening to that episode. Yeah, thank you all for watching. Please remember to like this video. It helps us out a lot. And subscribe to the channel. We have new shows coming out every week. Brand new show just released this Friday. It's called Film Coven with Kelly Meehan and Melissa Woody. They are talking about great female characters in the world of film. So please go and check that out. It's a wonderful new show. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Like I said, like this video, subscribe to the video store. We have new videos coming out every day throughout the week. And until next time, have a great night.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was Beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.